Hello, everybody. It's John Davis with Lachlan Highlands Farm, coming to you from our amazing high-tech studio, and doing a little bit of a different video series today about something I'm passionate about. So I think I'm going to call this series "Selling the Farm," and no, I am not selling our farm, but it is about selling what we make on our farms, and that is something that is near and dear to my heart and critically important. Because if you have a farm, you know that you put a lot into it. You put a lot of your own money into it, you put a lot of your own time into it, and it's much more than just a job. It's a lifestyle. So us who have town jobs and who work on the farm, we work two full-time jobs, and the farm job is more than full-time if that's possible, right? Because of that, if we're putting all of this into it, we have to get something out of it, or else it's just not sustainable. So I'm hoping that the 20 years of experience I have in the professional selling world is something that I can use to help anyone who has a farm to sell the products they make on their farm and at the end make a profit. That's really what we have to do. You have to make a profit to have a successful business. So I put together this series for people who have small farms or homesteads that are selling direct to consumer or to other businesses. So you're selling food, you're selling meat, you're selling vegetables. Doesn't really matter. The same concepts still apply. And I'm hoping that you can take this information that I've learned from 20 years of doing this in the non-farm world and use it to make your farm or your homestead, I'll just call it a farm, make your farm into a profitable enterprise that, well, it increases your self-sufficiency, most importantly. So either increases your self-sufficiency by having another revenue source, or increases your self-sufficiency by completely being able to quit your town job and do what you want to do on your terms, which is pretty awesome. So that would be reason number one. Reason number two would be it gives you something to pass on to the next generation. Whether you have kids or there's a young enterprising family that wants to get into farming and homesteading, that you want to pass your business on to, you can't pass on something that's bankrupt. So if you pass on a viable business and all the knowledge that goes along with that, you're helping the next generation come up and do what needs to be done to feed the people that live in our communities. Also, the farm that I'm on, we're fourth generation farmers on this farm. And yeah, things are a lot different now with agriculture than they were back when my grandfather was farming. He raised a family of five on a very, very small dairy farm. And he had a town job too. He built houses and did construction work and handyman work and that type of thing. But their primary income was from the farm. There's a variety of reasons for that. And I'll put up an image on the screen here that just shows what has gone on since Grandpa was farming. A lot of it has to do with consolidation of farms. So big corporate enterprises are farming more and more land, and they're pushing out the small family farm, which used to be the cornerstone of American commerce, was the small family farm. Small family farms are going out of business because they can't compete with these gigantic corporations at scale. And I could talk for an hour about why that is horrible and awful and a travesty of the American dream, but we don't have time for that. Just look at these, look at the figures, and you'll see that things are not great. But there is an answer to this, and the answer is small family farms figuring out how to be profitable in the context of selling new products and selling new services and all kinds of stuff in a way that's different than these big farms are going. A better way to say that is we have to sell differently. We have to compete differently. If we try to go head to head against these giant farms farming thousands of acres with equipment that costs more than I'll ever make in a lifetime, we're going to lose. So we have to be smarter. And part of that is just being educated on how to run a business, how to run an extremely profitable small business, and how you can make that help you. So anyway, hopefully this video helps with that. I'm going to go through how we cost our chicken, and I'll show you everything. This helps me in a couple ways. One, it helps me give back to the community and help other people like me sell and be more profitable and have a better business. But it also helps my customers too, because we get criticism. Hey, your chicken's super expensive, your pork's super expensive, it's more than a grocery store. Well, yeah, it is. The stuff you buy at the grocery store is made in an industrialized farming system, and it's pumped full of all types of things that get the cost of goods down at the expense of the health of the consumer. That's bad. I think my favorite answer to your chicken costs too much is what Joel Salatin gives. He just looks at people who tell him that and say, well, yeah, that's what it costs to make. We're not making huge amounts of money off of selling chicken or beef or turkey or whatever. We do manufacture, we do produce a high quality product that you are definitely not going to find in a grocery store. And you're probably going to have a hard time finding at a butcher shop, and you're going to have an even harder time finding it at the local farm stand. We go for soy-free, organic, pasture-raised, uh, everything as much as we can, and especially the soy-free portion is hard. But I digress. We're selling a high-value product, and we know what our costs are. And I think you'll see in this, one of the gravest mistakes that I see small farmers and small homesteaders make is that they don't know how to calculate their costs. And they try to compete with the commodity market. So, hey, grocery store chicken costs blah, 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 $2 a pound. We're going to sell it for $2.50 a pound. You're not even close to making a profit on that. So my goal is to educate educate you, somebody who's selling this, about how to make a better profit. So without further ado, I'd like to make some definitions first, and define some definitions first, and then get into how we calculate profit, how we calculate our sale price, and how does that fit into the context of an overall profit and loss for a farm. So this is by no means comprehensive, and I'm by no means an expert, but hopefully it helps you with getting started on becoming a more profitable small farm enterprise. So let's get started. I try not to bore people to death with PowerPoints and slides. I don't do that at work, and I definitely will not do that in a YouTube video. But I wanted to put these up so you could pause the video, take a look at it, and use this as a good resource to learn yourself on how to do this stuff moving forward. So some definitions first. These are terms that I'm going to use when I'm talking about how we price our products and what we're trying to get to from a profit and loss standpoint, and really how to run our farm like a business. And there's a whole lot more than you can learn about all of this, but really business is not that difficult, and understanding numbers in the context of business is not that difficult. You want to bring in more money than you spend, and that's called your profit. And that's it. And there's a whole bunch of fancy terms that go along with it. But really, what I have on the screen right now is really the core of it. So COGS, you'll hear me refer to that, so cost of goods sold. You can see that there, gross profit, net profit. So gross profit is if you have your cost of goods sold, let's say you sell something for $10 and it costs you $8 to produce it. So your cost of goods sold is $8, your sale price is $10, and the difference would be your gross profit, so $2. Net profit would be you have expenses on top of that. And I'll show this in an actual example of a profit and loss statement later. But if you have expenses, that would be your salaries, that would be electric bills, that would be marketing expenses, taxes, all that. That's your expenses. So let's say you have $1 of expenses in that $10 product. So your product is sold for $10. You've got $8 wrapped up into the cost of production. So you have $2 gross profit. You have $1 worth of expenses. So your net profit would be $1. All right. B2C and B2B, I'll use those terms as well. Different sales strategies. That's probably a whole different video series of how to sell to businesses, which in our case as farm producers would likely be restaurants or wholesalers, and how to sell to consumers. Consumers would be your farm to table. People come to your farm to buy stuff. You're shipping products to somebody. That's your business to consumer. I'm a consumer. You're a consumer. Consumer is the general public. You know, some person who's buying stuff to put in their freezer, that type of thing. I want to talk about profit for a minute because profit is an important concept, and I think it bears having a bit of a school lecture on this one. I pulled a bunch of this data. Frankly, I used ChatGPT to help me get through some of this research, and you can go and research your own. I'm sure the numbers are accurate enough, right? This will give you an idea of where we're at. So I guess what I'm saying is don't skewer me on the numbers, but knowing what I know about manufacturing, which is a lot because that's my day job, and the little bit I know about farms, I'd say the numbers are at least in the right area. The point I want to make though is that you have to have a lot more profit built into your products if you actually want to make money on your farm. Okay, so we're talking net profit in that 12 to 1%, and then we're comparing that to other types of businesses at net profit as well. So again, net profit that's your gross profit minus all of your expenses at the end of the day or at the bottom of the balance sheet below the line. Bottom line, that's where that phrase comes from. So the bottom line, which I'll show you in the profit and loss, is 12.1%. So after all the money's spent and all the money is brought in, you keep 12%, okay? Really good companies are operating at 20% and above. I think Apple operates at something like 30% gross margin, which is crazy, right? But they command a premium for their products, and they can do that because they're Apple and they have a tremendous brand. Again, a whole different topic, but they're up in the 30% range, which is awesome. Really good manufacturing businesses are in like the 13 to 15% range, all right? And manufacturing and farming has a lot in common. Huge capital outlays. It costs a lot of money to run those businesses. Your cost of goods sold is high because you have not only labor, but you've got huge inputs in terms of material. You've got equipment. You've got all that stuff, right? So that said, it's hard to make money in manufacturing, and manufacturing is significantly more profitable than farming. So, it's one of those things that you got to look at. I mean, the difference between 12% and 15% is 25%. So, just to throw some numbers out there, manufacturing, which is hard to begin with, is 25% more profitable than farming. So, farming sucks from a profitability standpoint, just out there, okay? So, I want to put that out there because we all know that it's hard. Now, you let's set a target and say 20% net profit. If you're a small producer and you're making 20% after all your expenses, you can live on that. I think you could thrive on that, actually. If you're bringing in 20%, that's a pretty large amount. That's a good place to be. And that's a number that we should all strive for as small farm producers. The point I want to drive home is that to get 20% net profit, at minimum, you're going to need 50 to 60% gross profit. And if you're not thinking like, oh crap, I've been selling my products for way too little, then you're not understanding this fully. So let me say, so if you're gonna sell, if it costs you $10 to produce a chicken, you need to be selling that chicken for at least well, 15 would be super skinny. You need to be selling that chicken for like $25, $25 to $30, and that's more than 50 to 60% gross profit. But you'll see in the sheet of why like you need that. So at bare minimum, you need to be making 50 to 60% gross profit to even break out. Okay, that should have woken you up. I hope you understand those numbers because that's really, really important. And the number one trap that small farmers and homesteaders fall into is they don't sell the product for enough money. If you're not losing customers because your product is quote unquote too expensive, you can raise your price. Okay, so let's get in there. We're farmers and we're business people, and we deserve to make a profit because we work hard. So let's make that profit. You can increase profit by increasing your sale price, which you should do. 99% of the people watching this video, you need to increase your sale price, all right? I have no idea what you're selling it for, but you need to increase your sale price. I can just tell you that. Or decrease how much it costs to produce your product, the COGS. But you need to reduce your COGS by doing this without sacrificing your quality or your brand promise, what you have promised your consumers. In our case, we tell our customers that we raise soy-free chicken, so we don't use soy to feed our animals. I could significantly lower my cost by feeding my animals soy, but then I'm a liar if I sell the product after sell it to a consumer after feeding them soy. Okay, so you have to do business ethically. You can never do that. So you have to decrease your COGS. Well, that's easy in concept, hard in practice. How do you decrease your COGS? Well, you can increase your efficiency of scale. So, for example, buying 10 chickens is a lot different than buying 100 chickens, is a lot different than buying 500 chickens. Your cost per chicken goes down like a lot. I think the price delta is like dollars between chickens when you're buying, we buy from Meyer Hatchery, but when you buy one chicken versus 10 versus 100, you're saving like $1.50, I think, per chicken in that spread. That's huge. That's huge. You can be more efficient in your time. So this is what we're focusing on our farm. I mean, we will grow our scale as we grow our customer base. So I'm not as worried about growing scale. As we make more sales, we'll buy more stuff and we'll get better pricing. That part will just happen as the business grows. Efficiency of time is huge. If you are not efficient in your time and your infrastructure is not efficient, as your business grows, you are going to bleed money like somebody who's been shot with a cannon, all right? Like you cannot be inefficient with your time. So we spend a tremendous amount of time and money for that matter on making our farming processes highly efficient. So that's a good idea. Reduction of cost. As Ian Mitchell McGinnis, who is a fantastic, probably one of the best known managed intensive grazing instructors on the planet. He's from South Africa. I met him at Greg Judy's grazing school. He says, stop sending your money to town. stop spending money. Like, stop spending money frivolously, stop spending stupid money, figure out ways to reduce costs. So if you're using fertilizer in your pastures, there are ways to reduce your fertilizer cost or eliminate it altogether. Don't buy equipment you don't need. You don't need a new truck. You don't need a new tractor. Uh, all that stuff, right? So just stop spending money, but don't do it at the detriment of increasing your, well, happiness. So, don't go out there with a plow and draft horses, because that sucks. But also don't do it at the expense of, cheaping out on infrastructure where you save $1 today, but it costs you $5 tomorrow. So you don't want to do that. But these are things to be thinking about as you're evolving your farm business and you're growing it. You constantly have to go back to, uh, how do I increase profit and how do I decrease COGS? That should be something that you're working on a regular basis. At this point, you're probably saying, John, this is great information. Thank you very much for the class on how to, I don't know, sell product and a little bit of a business course. That's awesome. But we need to get to the meat of the question. I probably just lost you because my jokes are horrible, but I think they're awesome, and my opinion is the only one that matters. But you get the idea. Okay, so we went through this stuff. We understand we got to make profit. Sweet. How? How do we price our chicken? Do we just like make a price and go for it? No. There is a way to do it, and it's actually pretty straightforward. This is a spreadsheet I put together to help me price out our chicken. Now, if you want the spreadsheet, put your information in the comments or reach out to me in the comments. I'd be more than happy to provide it to you. It's certainly not proprietary, and you'll have to put up with my shorthand that's in it, but if it helps you be more profitable, I'm happy to provide it. So this is how it's structured. On the left side column, I've got my cost of goods sold, and I split it up into a base cost of goods sold. So for a chicken, no matter how the chicken is processed, it's going to cost me, in this case, $13.60 for every bird that I raise and get processed. This value add COGS, for a whole bird or a parted bird, those are different cuts. So a whole bird would be my base case because there's really no extra value add that goes into it. It's just the processing, the slaughtering, bagging, etc. And then it's a whole bird in a vacuum sealed bag. The parted bird, though, that has a lot more value add because it's cut up. So I need to make sure I reflect that in the cost. So my parted birds are going to be slightly more expensive than my whole birds. Or if they're the same price, I would just make less profit margin on the parted bird versus the whole bird. That's a decision you'll have to make with how you structure your business, whether or not you want to have a pricing strategy where it's flat across the board or have a pricing strategy where it's different for each one. That's outside of the scope of this conversation, but I do want you to see that the costs are different. When I plug it in, my base COGS is always going to include a chick, which costs $1 or a few dollars. That's going to come from Meyer Hatchery in our case. We have feed per bird, and that feed is a calculation that is based on these numbers. By the way, let me bring up my other screen here. Your feed costs are going to be different for each type of bird that you raise. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we look at the feed, or sorry, if we look at, we buy our chicks from Meyer Hatchery. They're awesome because I can look at my quantity pricing. So the more chicks I buy, the more I get off. So there's a 42% spread between one chick, I guess they have that calculated off of, versus 250 chicks. So the more chicks you buy, your cost of goods sold goes down because your cost per unit of chicken goes down. Anyway, so that works out well. You can see that price in there. And then they are awesome in that they provide a feed chart. So I took this feed chart and I put it into my cost calculator. So I know if I raise the birds to be 8 weeks in age, each bird is going to eat X pounds of feed. And that helps me calculate my feed costs because then I know how much my feed actually costs when I buy it from the feed mill. And I know how much each bird is going to eat. So let's bring Excel back up. Okay, so I know how much feed the bird's going to eat. I factor in transportation. I have to drive an hour and a half to get these birds processed at a facility that gives us the magic stamp so I can resell packaged meat to my end customer. So that's a state and federally approved facility. For us, that's an hour and a half away. Got to make sure you calculate that in. And then labor. You always have to calculate labor. Homesteaders and farmers, we don't put our own labor in. That's a problem. Yeah, my labor might be free because it's me or it's my wife, but as we scale and grow, which I expect to do, I'm going to have to pay somebody to help out. And if I would rather factor that in now and use the extra profit to help us grow the business, than to get to a point where I'm like, oh crap, I need to hire help, and I can't afford it. I don't have any profit margin. So always include labor, even if you're tiny. Even if you're a one-man or a one-woman operation, always make sure you include labor. The value add is where I include slaughter fees, cutting fees, vacuum packing. These are all costs that I get from our processor, and they help me figure it out. So for my cost of goods sold, um, when I'm buying 200 birds at a time, and feed is $31.20 a bag, and I'm $18 per hour, which, believe it or not, is the going rate to get help if I had to pay somebody, is our labor fee. And 30 minutes per day is what we typically spend on our chicken system. At 13.5 pounds of feed per week, and my slaughter fees, mileage to processor, the IRS given cost per mile for reimbursement. When I factor that all in, my base COGS is $13.60. And so my overall cost of goods sold for each chicken is about $17, okay, for a whole chicken. It goes up a little bit, let's call it $18. Now, that's probably a lot more than you thought, wasn't it? When we come over and look at profit, based on a 4-pound bird at time of sale, so after the bird's slaughtered and it's in the bag, average weight's going to be about 4 pounds. And I always estimate on the conservative side of things. I can look at my total cost of goods at the sell weight. I can look at my cost per pound, my cost of goods sold per pound, my sell price per pound. That's where I start plugging in numbers of like, okay, like how much can I sell this bird for? I'm going to sell a whole bird for $30. I know, hear me out. And I'm going to make $12.56 per bird. So I'm not quite making 100% profit, but I'm close. For a parted bird, you can look down and go through the same equation here. So you're like, holy moly, a $30 chicken, that's super expensive. Well, yeah, if I sell 100 chickens, I'm only making $1,200. Think about that for a minute. So if you raise chickens right now, you know how hard it is and how time consuming to move these chicken tractors every day. It's 90 degrees outside. You've got chickens running out of the chicken tractors. You've got, all this stuff, right? You've got feed that's extremely expensive. And you're at the minimum, if you pre-sale all your chickens, you're laying out all of that time, all of that cost up front, a minimum of 8 weeks to see any return on your investment. And at a $30 chicken, you're making $1,200 if you sell everything, and it's going to take a lot longer to sell those chickens. So let's say you spend, a few $1,000 if you look at how much your chicken tractors cost and how much your chickens cost and all that. It's going to take you months to see a return. So of $1,200, okay? So you really, really, really have to make some profit, everyone, because if you're not making profit, you're going to be falling behind. You've got all this production costs on the upfront, and then you're acting as a bank at an interest-free loan until you're waiting to clear your inventory out. Honestly, that chicken should be like $50. Chicken's not our main thing, so we're willing to sacrifice some profit. We know they help We know they help fertilize our pastures, and it's good cash flow, and people like chickens, so we do it, and we know it's a lower profit item. But still, you can see why it's so important to make some money here. Now, we're looking at a $30 chicken, okay? I compare this then because we have to sell it too. If our customers aren't willing to pay $30 for a chicken, then we're in big trouble because we won't sell it to anybody. Then we make zero profit, and that's no good. But why can't I sell a $50 chicken? Well, I go and I compare that to 2 places. So this pricing's a little bit old, I need to update it, but our processor, they also sell chicken too, and they're selling extremely high quality chicken just like ours. Now theirs is not soy free in their feed, but it's pasture raised, etc. And they're butchering it themselves, so their costs are lower. This is their sell price per pound for chicken, okay? So that's their retail pricing that's on their price sheet. So I look at that versus ours, that's a good comparison. I also, let me switch screens again. I also look at, all right, if you go to the USDA, you can look at this URL and copy it in. I don't know if you knew this, but the USDA publishes monthly reports for pasture-raised poultry, grass-fed lamb, grass-fed beef, turkeys, goats, all of it. So they have these reports and they're free and they're awesome. So if you check out this report, and I'm going to turn off my camera so you can see the whole thing. If you check out this report, they are giving you price ranges for wholesale pasture-raised turkey as well as direct-to-consumer pasture-raised turkey, which is incredible, okay? So for example, for our whole chicken, The range is 259 to 1064, with a simple average being $6.73. So 259 to 1064. If we look back at Excel, that's per pound, by the way. Our price per pound is 750. So I typically try to take the middle of that range. So I take the average and I add, 20% to it. I figure 20% is a pretty good place to be considering we add so much value with being soy free and a whole bunch of other stuff. So these are national prices. You can use this as a baseline to price your chicken. So my $30 chicken at $7.50 a pound or whatever, or $7 a pound, all of a sudden doesn't look that expensive because if I compare myself to the national, I'm kind of middle of the road. That makes me feel good. I don't want to rip off my customers. But on the other side of that, if my customers are willing to pay $30 for a chicken or $50 for a chicken, they know what they're getting and they're excited that they can just find the product. Because if there's always the pricing is based on scarcity. So the less supply and demand. So the less of a product, the higher the price. If they're paying $50 for a chicken, they're paying $50 for a chicken because they're looking for something hyper specific that they can't find at the grocery store. And I guarantee you they're ecstatic to spend $50 for a chicken because they know you're the only farm in like anywhere that sells a chicken that is worth $50 to them because it meets all their criteria. So it's a good thing. These are things to look at. You can do the same type of exercise for anything you sell, and the USDA publishes reports for all of this stuff. So there's a lot in this video, and I appreciate you sticking with me, and I really do hope that what I am teaching is something that you can use to make your farm more profitable, make it more productive, more sustainable. Part of self-reliability and sustainability is sustainability. You can't sustain something that's going bankrupt or is out of money. It just doesn't work. So if there's nothing else you take away from this, it's that you have to be profitable. So I wanted to spend the last few minutes of this video spending some time with a profit and loss. If you've never looked at a profit and loss, this is something that you really, really, really need to do for your farm. If you're not running your farm like a business, you also need to do this because this is just the natural outcome of having your business taxes done, a profit and loss statement. You need to do that for a couple of reasons. One, you need to know if you're making money. That's how else are you going to know if you're making profit. Two, if you're not running your farm as a business, even if it is not your mainline business, you are missing out on tax breaks and tax advantages that we get as farmers. Why would you pay more taxes than you have to? That's a non-productive use of money. It's ridiculous. We pay enough taxes already. But I digress. A profit and loss statement. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be something that's very simple. So this profit and loss statement, I had ChatGPT put this together. I may as well use AI. It's here to stay. I had ChatGPT put this together, and I want to explain what it is so that you have a better understanding of what we're dealing with when I talk about things like profit and loss and why it's so important. So generally speaking, profit and loss statements are all going to follow the same type of format. I mentioned earlier on in the video that it's about the top line and it's all about the bottom line. So the bottom line is going to be literally at the bottom of the chart. That's why it's called the bottom line. It's where that comes from. Okay. Top line would be your total revenue, your total sales. So the profit and loss chart, it starts at the top. So what did you sell? It's all about sales in business. What did you sell? And then the bottom line is how much money do you keep after you pay all of your expenses? It's really that simple. That's all the profit and loss is going through. So in the sample that ChatGPT put together here, we have a total revenue of $260,000. And after our cost of goods sold, so this is the COGS calculated for this imaginary farm, the COGS is $65,000. So they sold $260,000, and then their cost of production for that $260,000 of revenue of sales was $65,000. So the gross profit at the end of that is $195,000. So hopefully that makes sense. And that's the type of stuff that's in your cost. What's the difference between a cost of goods sold and a straight up expense? A cost of goods sold would be something that you need to make the product. So if you're raising animals, feed, vet expenses, all that stuff, right? Veterinary supplies would be another one. Things you need to raise the animals, okay? So that's your gross profit you have there. Operating expenses. I think we can all understand what these are. Expenses in this case would be repairs and maintenance because nothing ever breaks on a farm, right? You never have to repair anything. So repairs and maintenance would be an expense. Fuel would be an expense. Insurance, property taxes, all the stuff where you have to spend money, but it's not necessarily rolled into the cost of production, if that makes sense. It supports production, but it's not rolled into the cost of production. Now, in the final pricing, you're going to look at your operating expenses and you're going to be like, oh man, my operating expenses have gone up, so maybe I need to increase my profit margin my uh, on my birds or on the product that I'm selling or whatever. Like that all factors into it, right? Uh, so you have your operating expenses of 110,000, and then you take your 110,000, you subtract that from your gross profit. So these are all your expenses. You subtract that from your gross profit, and you're left with an operating profit of 85,000 or an EBIT. Now, EBIT and EBITDA, those are advanced terms. You can go look those up if you want to see what they are. It's just I was going to say a fancy way of saying net profit. There's some utility to it, and there's a reason that there's EBIT. They use EBIT and EBITDA instead of net profit. But again, outside of the scope of this video. So that would be your net profit, okay? And then there's some other stuff, and this is where the EBITDA comes in. You would subtract your interest expenses, you would subtract your taxes, blah, 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 blah. And then your earnings after taxes would be $60,000. So after you pay all that stuff, you would put 60,000 bucks in the pocket of your business. That's your net profit. There's a reason you calculate profit before and after taxes. Again, it's outside of the scope of this video. So, pennies make dimes, dimes make dollars, dollars make or break your business. If you are out of control with your expenses or out of control with your COGS, you're going to not make money and you're not going to be happy. It's going to be a bad day. You should be running a profit and loss statement for your business because it shows you where your money's going, and you need to know where your money's going if you want to be a profitable enterprise. Or if you just want to have a homestead that's sustainable. You don't have to be an enterprise. You could be a homestead and you're like, holy moly, you know, we're spending $50,000 a year in expenses on our homestead and we're saving $2,000 a year in groceries. Like, unless you really like doing it, I mean, you really have to like doing it to have a net loss of $48,000 on your homestead every year. If you're doing it that way, you're not doing it right. But you may not know that until you kind of, list stuff out like that. The other side of that would be if you're losing $48,000 on your homestead and you're not taking that as a tax advantage because your homestead is a business, you are dumb, my friend. You need to figure that one out and make that work. Hire a tax accountant and figure out how to make that loss less, right? Anywho. I hope this video helps. I really do have a passion and a mission for helping people become better with their homestead and farming operations, and I think there's a greater call here too. People are sick. People aren't healthy. The food that is being fed by the industrial farm system is killing our neighbors. It's killing our families. It's killing all of us. We need to figure out a better way to make better food in a way that puts money in our pocket so that we can make a more sustainable economy and a more sustainable agriculture system in this country. We can't have these gigantic monopolies owning all of the farmland and planting acres and acres and acres and acres of food that is not actually food. We need to have a comeback in small family farms. And that starts with an understanding of how to make your farm/homestead/farmstead a profitable enterprise. So I hope you like this. If you do like this, please put it in the comments. I'll try to make more content that is like this. If you want to support us, please go to our store, LachlanHighlandsFarm.com. Buy some meat. Please like and subscribe. That's always a good thing, and we appreciate it. So God bless you. God bless your family. Please pray for us, and just keep on keeping on. So John Davis, Lachlan Highlands Farm, signing off. Thank you.